So today we shall start with the drug receptor interactions. See, under drug receptor interaction, so there are terms which are related to the drug receptor interactions. So first we will study about that. So the first term is, what do you mean by drug action? See, drug action, it is the initial combination of drug with its receptor, as a result of which it leads to a biological response. So as you see here, drug is being binded to a receptor to form drug receptor complex. As a result, the effect is seen. So the initial binding of a drug to the receptor, we call it as drug action. So what do you mean by drug effect? See, drug effect, it is the ultimate observable change in the biological function of a cell as a consequence of drug action. See, for example, the omeprazole. See, omeprazole, how it acts, the mechanism of action of omeprazole is, it acts by binding to the transporter H plus potassium ATPase in the parietal cell and inhibits this transporter. So by inhibiting this transporter, it inhibits the efflux of H plus ion. So as a result of inhibition in the efflux of the H plus, the acidity will be decreased. So it reduces the acidity as a result of inhibition of this transporter. So omeprazole binding to H plus potassium ATPase, so that we call it as drug action, the binding of a drug to its receptor. So as a result of binding of a drug to the receptor, what is the effect you are seeing? It is reducing the acidity. So that is the meaning of drug effect. So often these two words are used interchangeably, but to be precise, so there is a separate meaning that is attributed to drug action and the drug effect. So next is affinity. What do you mean by affinity? See, affinity, it is the ability of a drug to combine with its receptor. So it is the intrinsic ability of the drug to combine with its receptor. So that characteristic we call it as affinity. Then when you can call a drug is having higher affinity. So you can call a drug is having higher affinity when the drug at its lowest concentration, which is enough to occupy the receptor to produce the pharmacological effect, then you call that drug is having higher affinity. Say for example, as drug A, it is producing the effect just by occupying less than 20% of the receptor. Just by occupying less than 20% of the receptor, it is producing more than 80% of response. You can call the drug as having higher affinity. Similarly, when you can call a drug as having lower affinity, a relatively higher concentration of drug is needed to occupy the receptor to produce the pharmacological effect. See, for example, if a drug B, which is having lower affinity, if it want to produce more than 80% of response, it will try to occupy 50% of the receptor. It will try to occupy 50% of the receptor, then it is producing more than 80% of the response. But a drug with higher affinity, it is just occupying less than 20% of the receptor and producing more than 80% of the response. That is the meaning of a drug with higher affinity and lower affinity. Then intrinsic activity, also called as efficacy. What do you mean by intrinsic activity or the efficacy? So it is the relative ability of the drug to evoke a pharmacological response. So again, it is an intrinsic ability of the drug to produce a pharmacological response. So that we call it as intrinsic activity or the efficacy. So the same thing, drug with high efficacy. When you call a drug with higher efficacy, so if it is producing maximum response just by occupying small portion of the receptor, and low efficacy, the low response even after occupying the entire proportion of the receptor, then we call it as a drug is having lower efficacy or the drug will be having higher efficacy. And these two are very important characteristic of the drug. Which are the two characteristics? One is affinity and intrinsic activity or efficacy. So these two are important characteristics of a drug. So next is different types of drug. So what are the different types of drug we encounter? So the different types of drug where the general pharmacology or the entire pharmacology revolves around, see, agonist. What do you mean by antagonist? Inverse agonist, mixed agonist or antagonist, super agonist and the co-agonist. The agonist, first we shall see what do you mean by an agonist. See, agonist, it is a drug which resembles endogenous ligand and that interacts with a specific receptor to elicit an observable positive response. See, agonist is a drug that binds with the receptor, the same receptor as that of endogenous ligand, and it will elicit an observable positive response. See, what do you mean by observable positive response? See, for example, salivation. See, salivation, what will happen? Sometimes a drug will bind to the acetylcholine receptor and produce a salivation. And that amount of salivation, what is produced by a drug, it might not be observable. So, it is not producing the intended amount of salivary secretion. Then that response will go unnoticed. So, only when that response is noticed, or only if a drug is having capacity to produce observable positive response, then only you can call it as agonist. So, that's why the term to elicit an observable positive response. See for example, the drugs which are decreasing the blood pressure. So, our intended effect is to decrease the blood pressure less than 160 millimeter of mercury, right? So, that is our intended effect, to reduce the blood pressure less than 160 millimeter. So, if you are giving some drug which is not producing this intended effect, so you cannot call that as a perfect drug, okay? So, like that. So, it should produce an observable positive response. And agonist, it is a drug which resembles endogenous ligand. See, for example, phenylephrine. See, phenylephrine, it is an agonist, and it's an agonist which resembles endogenous ligand. So, here it is resembling norepinephrine. So, norepinephrine, it's an endogenous ligand produced by our body. It will bind with the alpha receptor. It is an endogenous ligand binding with the alpha receptor. When you give phenylephrine, which resembles the norepinephrine, it will act on the alpha receptor, which causes vasoconstriction and increases the blood pressure. And this increase in the blood pressure, it should be observable. So, it should produce an observable positive response. Then you can call this phenylephrine as the agonist. So, what about the affinity and efficacy of an agonist? So, it is a drug which is interacting with a specific receptor. That means it is binding with a specific receptor. So, it is having the capacity to bind with the receptor. So, affinity is good. So, it is having the good affinity. And it is eliciting an observable positive response. So, it is producing the effect. So, it is the ability of a drug to produce an effect. We call it as efficacy. So, it is having a good efficacy. So, that means drug is combining with the receptor to form a complex, and this complex is not sufficient if it is in an inactive state. That inactive drug receptor complex, it has to get switched into an active complex state, then it has to produce an effect. So, this the efficacy lies here. So, an inactive complex switching into an active DR complex, then only it will produce the effect. So, this is about agonist. So, under agonist, you get different types of agonist. See, for example, a drug A and drug B. See, drug A and drug B, drug A is also binding to a receptor and producing a positive response, and drug B is also producing the same thing. But what happened to the magnitude of the effect? See, A is producing lesser effect when you compare it with the B. So, accordingly, you classify agonist into full agonist and the partial agonist. Agonists are classified into full agonist and partial agonist. See, what do you mean by full agonist? Full agonist is an agonist that binds to the receptor, activates it, and produces the maximum response that the tissue is capable of giving. So, if a tissue is capable of eliciting 100% response, if an agonist, if it derives 100% out of the tissue, then that drug we call it as full agonist. See, for example here. So, this is a graph. So, where the x-axis, the concentration of drug what you are giving, in the y-axis is the response of the drug according to the concentration of the drug. So, the first graph, it is of phenylephrine. Then these are all agonists of alpha receptor, phenylephrine, clonidine. So, likewise you name it as B, C, D. So, the name is not needed right now. So, the important ones are phenylephrine and clonidine, and other drugs are B, C, D. So, if you look at the response curve of the phenylephrine, so the response curve of the phenylephrine, it is higher, or it is producing maximum response when you compare it with the other drugs. See, as the concentration of the drug increases, the response of the phenylephrine, it has increased, and it also produces the maximum effect. It is the drug which has produced the maximum effect. That means phenylephrine is a full agonist that binds with the specific receptor, and it derives the maximum response out of the tissue which is capable of. Whereas B, C, D, see phenylephrine, see it is And you take another example where the x-axis is fraction of receptors occupied and y-axis is the response. See here the phenylephrine, by occupying the 50% of the receptor, just by occupying the 50% of the receptor, it is producing the maximum effect. When you compare it with the other drugs, say B, C, D or E, so it is occupying 100% of the receptor. So even though it occupies 100% of the receptor, the response is less than the maximum, right? So you are not getting the maximum response similar to the phenylephrine. So what do you call those drugs as? You call those drugs as partial agonist. Okay. See, what do you mean by partial agonist? Partial agonist, it is an agonist. Partial agonist is an agonist that acts on the same receptor as a full agonist, but regardless of its dose and regardless of its maximum occupancy of the receptor, it cannot elicit the maximum response of which a tissue is capable of. The same thing has been told here. See here, the B, C, D and E drugs, even though they occupy 100% of the receptor and even though you give the maximum concentration, so here it has reached 10 milligram, all the B, C, D drugs have reached 10 milligram. Similarly, phenylephrine has also reached the maximum, but it is producing a maximum effect, whereas the other drugs, even though regardless of its dose, regardless of its occupancy of the receptor, it is not showing the maximum response of which a tissue is capable of, and such drugs you call it as partial agonist. But a full agonist is one which is producing or deriving the maximum response from a tissue which is capable of. So that is the meaning of a full agonist and partial agonist. So the example of full agonist, here it will be phenylephrine acting on alpha receptor. So the example of partial agonist, clonidine is a partial agonist acting on the alpha receptor. So what happens to the affinity then? See what happens to the affinity of the full agonist. So it is binding to the receptor, affinity will be good. What happens to the efficacy? Since it is producing maximum response, the affinity will be 100% or numerically efficacy will be equal to 1. So the efficacy will be higher for the full agonist. What will be the affinity and efficacy of partial agonist? See the affinity of the partial agonist, see it is binding to the same receptor as that of full agonist. So affinity is good. What happens to the efficacy? The efficacy ranges from 0 to 1. So in textbook it is written as 0 to 1. So to be more precise, it ranges from 0 to less than 1. Because if the efficacy reaches 1, the partial agonist will become full agonist. So to be precise, the efficacy of the partial agonist, it ranges from 0 to less than 1. Okay. Then the assignment questions here. See what happens to the efficacy of the phenylephrine. Phenylephrine here is a full agonist. So what happens to the efficacy of a full agonist when it is given along with the partial agonist? The partial agonist here, that example is clonidine. What happens to the efficacy of the full agonist when given along with a partial agonist? That's an assignment question. So next type of drug is the antagonist. See, antagonist, it is a drug that interacts with a specific receptor either on the orthosteric site or the allosteric site to inhibit the action of an agonist. See, orthosteric site is antagonist that is binding to similar site as that of agonist. Agonist, the preferred site on the receptor, we call it as orthosteric site. If antagonist is competing to the same site, then that site will become orthosteric site. So what do you mean by allosteric site? It is the other site other than the normal binding site of the agonist. So antagonist is binding to a different site on the receptor, not the same site as that of the agonist. So regardless of its binding, see it's a drug that interacts with a specific receptor, either orthostatic site or allosteric site, to inhibit the action of an agonist, then you call that type of drug as antagonist. So if such is the case, what will be its affinity? See, it is binding with the receptor, it is interacting with the receptor, same as that of agonist, so affinity will be there. So what happens to the efficacy? Efficacy is 0. Why it is 0? This antagonist, it is not imparting a new response all along. So if you give antagonist, it is binding to the receptor. So after binding to the receptor, it is not giving any specific response. What it is doing? It is just inhibiting the action of an agonist. See, for example, acetylcholine. See, acetylcholine, it acts on M receptor to increase the salivation. Okay. So then you give atropine. See, atropine, it will go and bind to the M receptor and inhibits the binding of acetylcholine to the M receptor. So, and then it will decrease the salivation. So, how we decrease the salivation? So, if the salivation has happened above 50%, so it will decrease that salivation. So, the normal level of salivation will be 10 to 20%. So, it will bring down that more than 50% of salivation to the 10 to 20% of normal salivation. So, here the antagonist, it is not bringing down the salivation less than 10%. So, it is not even bringing it less than 10%, or it is not bringing it, or it is not giving more than 50%. So, it is just inhibiting the action of the agonist. See what is agonist is doing, what acetylcholine is doing? Acetylcholine, it is increasing the salivation from 10 to 20% to 50%. It is the action of acetylcholine. And what this antagonist is doing, it is just inhibiting the action of an agonist. So, it is not imparting a new function to the receptor. It is just inhibit the action of an agonist. So, that is the meaning of the antagonist. So, affinity will be high, whereas efficacy will be 0. You get two types of antagonism, competitive antagonism, non-competitive antagonism, that we will study subsequently. Then the example, atropine is a competitive antagonist of acetylcholine and it does not impart a new response all alone. Then next type of drug is inverse agonist, are also called as negative antagonist. See, inverse agonist or negative antagonist, it is a drug that interacts with the same receptor as that of agonist, but it produces a response specifically opposite to that of agonist. So, it is a drug that interacts with the same receptor as that of agonist and produces the response which is specifically opposite to that of agonist. So, that we should keep in mind, that we should bear it in mind. See, antagonist, it is also acting on the same receptor as that of agonist, but it is inhibiting the action of the agonist and it is not producing opposite effect. Whereas inverse agonist, here it is producing action opposite to that of agonist, and that's why inverse agonist is also called as negative antagonist. In that sense, a normal antagonist, you can call it as neutral antagonist. Why neutral antagonist? It is not producing an opposite action to that of agonist. It is just inhibiting the action of an agonist. So nowadays the antagonists are also renamed as inverse agonist. That thing is still going on. Now what will be the affinity of the inverse agonist? See, it is interacting with the same receptor, then the affinity is good. What happens to the intrinsic activity? Intrinsic activity, it ranges from 0 to -1. Since the efficacy is, or the effect is opposite to that of agonist, so similarly efficacy will also range from 0 to -1 value. And another feature about inverse agonist is, so if you want to call a drug as inverse agonist, there is some prerequisite. So there are some conditions applied if you want to call a drug as inverse agonist. That prerequisite is, the prerequisite for inverse agonist activity is the presence of constitutive receptor. See, what do you mean by constitutive receptor? Constitutive receptors are such receptors which will be producing a basal level of effect without the presence of ligand. See, for example, GABA A receptor. See, GABA A receptor, which is the endogenous ligand for the GABA A receptor, the endogenous ligand for the GABA A receptor will be GABA neurotransmitter. So GABA neurotransmitter will bind with the GABA A receptor and produces the effect. That is the usual thing. See, what will happen, since GABA A is a constitutive receptor, even without binding of the GABA neurotransmitter, the GABA A will be producing a basal level of effect. So basal level of sedation, basal level of decrease in the anxiety, it will be keep on producing by the GABA A receptor. So such type of receptor you call it as constitutive receptor. See, for example, here the graph. So x-axis is ligand concentration, the y-axis is level of receptor activation. So without the involvement of any ligand, so you find this level of response. So this is, we call it as level of constitutive receptor action. So that basal level of reaction, it will always be there without the presence of any ligand. Now you are giving inverse agonist. So if you give inverse agonist now, so inverse agonist, it produces opposite effect to that of agonist. See, for example, the agonist. See, for example, GABA A receptor. I told you GABA A receptor is a constitutive receptor. See GABA A receptor. So the endogenous ligand for GABA A receptor is the GABA. See, along with the GABA, so there is another receptive site on the receptor for benzodiazepine. So I told you in another example only, see benzodiazepine, it facilitates the action of the GABA, right? Benzodiazepine, it facilitates the action of GABA. Benzodiazepine, it's an agonist that binds to the receptor, GABA A receptor, and brings about the action. So same thing, when you use benzodiazepine, what it produces? It produces sedation, anxiety, and muscle relaxation. One such example of benzodiazepine is the diazepam. So the sleeping tablet generally we prescribe diazepam. It is an agonist of GABA A receptor that produces sedation, anxiolysis, and muscle relaxation. So this is the effect produced by that. And if you give agonist along with an antagonist, so if you are giving diazepam along with flumazenil, flumazenil is an antagonist. And this flumazenil, it is a competitive antagonist. That means it competes for diazepam to bind to the BZD site. So flumazenil will go and bind to the BZD site. So it will inhibit the binding of diazepam. So as a result of which the response, it will shift to the right. The response curve shifts to the right. That means the response is decreased. The response what we see will be decreased when you use antagonist. Now you are using an inverse agonist, beta carbolin. So beta carbolin you are using inverse agonist. So this beta carbolin, it will also interact with the same receptor as that of the agonist. So it's go and bind to the BZD site, this beta carbolin. But this inverse agonist, what it is doing, it is producing the opposite effect. See, it is producing the opposite effect. Inverse agonist is producing opposite effect. What are those opposite effects? It is producing excitation, anxiety, and muscle contraction. So along with inverse agonist, if you are using flumazenil, what will happen? See, beta carbolin we have used. Now if you use flumazenil, so flumazenil will compete with the beta carbolin. Flumazenil will go and bind to this receptive site and it will decrease the opposite action of beta carbolin. So this response is shown here. So if you use an antagonist along with inverse agonist, the opposite effect will also be decreased. Okay, so this is the meaning of this response curve. So this will be the basal effect without presence of any ligand, without the presence of GABA, benzodiazepine, antagonist or inverse agonist, the receptor is showing this basal level of action. When you give an agonist, if you give a benzodiazepine, so the effect will shoot up. So the response what you see in here is with agonist, benzodiazepine or diazepam you are giving. So along with diazepam you are giving flumazenil, then the effect of the agonist will be decreased. So because the basic nature of antagonist is to inhibit the action of the agonist. Now if you give inverse agonist will bind to the similar site as that of agonist, but it produces the opposite response. So what is the opposite response? I told you, excitation, anxiety and muscle contraction. So along with inverse agonist, if you give an antagonist, it will decrease the opposite effect of the inverse agonist. So that is the meaning of inverse agonist. Inverse agonist is one which act on the same receptor as that of the agonist but produces opposite effect to that of an agonist. That is the meaning of inverse agonist. The basic thing about inverse agonist activity is the presence of constitutive receptor which can be active without presence of any ligand. Now the assignment question, what is the difference between an inverse agonist and antagonist? Okay, so because both action of inverse agonist and antagonist are contrary to the action of agonist. So what will be the difference between this inverse agonist and the antagonist? So to summarize the affinity and efficacy of the different types of drug, full drug, it will be having a good affinity, the efficacy will be 1. So it is producing maximum response out of the tissue which is capable of. Partial agonist, good affinity, it ranges from 0 to less than 1. It is failing to produce the maximum response out of the tissue even after occupying maximum number of receptor. Antagonist, binding to same receptor site as that of agonist but inhibiting the action of the agonist. It is not imparting a new action. It doesn't have any effect because of this because of its intrinsic ability. It is not producing any effect. So efficacy is 0. Inverse agonist, binding with the same site as that of the agonist but producing opposite effect. So that's why it's ranging from 0 to -1. there is another drug, super agonist, which binds with the receptor and produces the response more than that is produced by the endogenous ligand. So efficacy will be more than 1 for a super agonist. See, a super agonist. Super agonist is an agonist that produces a maximum response greater than that of endogenous ligand for that receptor. So affinity will be there, intrinsic activity will be more than 1. See, for example, goserelin. See, goserelin action on the gonadotropin releasing hormone receptor. So this goserelin action is more than the endogenous ligand, gonadotropin releasing hormone. So its action on GnRH receptor will be more than the action of the endogenous ligand. So that's why it's called a super agonist. So there is another term, co-agonist, which works with other agonists to produce the desired effect together. See, NMDA receptor, to activate NMDA receptor, we need the presence of glutamate as well as glycine to activate the NMDA receptor. So then this glutamate and glycines will become co-agonists. And there are some receptor theories, drug receptor theories that were put forward by the different gentlemen to explain the action of these different types of drug. See, why a drug act as agonist, why is drug act as antagonist, inverse agonist. So that explanation is given by the different theories that were put forward by different gentlemen. So these theories are important, sometimes asked in the descriptive questions. So the various drug receptor theories are the basic drug receptor theory postulated by Paul Ehrlich and J.N. Langley. Then receptor occupancy theory by A.J. Clark. Then modified receptor occupancy theory by E.J. Arians and Stephenson. Then rate theory by W.D.M. Patton. Then drug-induced protein changes theory, the postulator name is not known. Then two-state receptor theory postulated by Black and Leff. So basic drug receptor theory. So it is just like lock and key concept. So like a specific key is needed to open a lock. So similar to that, a specific drug is needed to produce the effect out of a receptor. That's the basic drug and receptor theory. But there are many shortcomings. See, thieves, so they will manage to open a lock by using the duplicate keys. So like that, so many keys you can make to open a lock due to technologies, right? So such shortcomings are there. So you cannot generalize this theory for all kind of effects. Okay. Then the second theory, receptor occupancy theory. So receptor occupancy theory, it is based on the law of mass action. See what this law of mass action tell you? The rate of reaction, it depends upon the product of the active substances. So depend upon the active substances, the rate of reaction will be seen. So similarly here, so depending upon the occupancy of the receptor by the drug, you can weigh the response. So the response of a drug, it is directly proportional to the proportion of the receptors that are occupied. Suppose drug A is there, if it occupies 50% of receptor, 50% of response will be seen. So if it is occupying more than 100%, if it occupies all the receptor, then you will see maximum response. That is the theory, that is the postulation of this theory. So it is like it is propagating the quantal or all or none response. See, for example, if a drug has to produce a response, so if you make a cutoff 60%, see if a drug is producing a response, means it has to occupy 60% of the receptor. If it does not occupy 60% of receptor, according to this theory, according to receptor occupancy theory, if a drug failed to occupy 60% of the receptor, it is not producing the effect. So if it only occupies more than 60%, then it is producing the response. That is quantal or non-response. If it occupies more than 60, the effect will be seen. If it occupies less than 60, no effect will be seen. So that such kind of postulation is made by receptor occupancy theory. And if you want to plot a graph here, so it will become hyperbolic curve. So as and when the receptor occupation goes on, the response will be, you will see. So that is the hyperbolic curve. And another thing here is, so there is a log concentration versus effect curve. So log concentration along the x-axis and the effect on the y-axis. So that thing is given by the same gentleman, Clark and Gedam. So that is a note here. Then shortcomings. What is the shortcoming of receptor occupancy theory? So receptor occupancy theory, it does not explain the action of partial agonist and full agonist. See, partial agonist, I told you, even after occupancy of 100% of receptor, it failed to produce maximal response. Whereas full agonist, by occupying relatively small number of receptor, it is producing maximum response. But this receptor occupancy theory is telling you the different thing. So the response purely depends upon the number of the receptor it occupies. So there are some shortcomings. So again the new theory has been postulated. So the new theory was modified receptor occupancy theory to overcome the receptor occupancy theory. So the named the another theory modified receptor occupancy. So where they introduced the concept of efficacy. See, across the drug, the affinity remains the same. See, if you see agonist, antagonist, inverse agonist or any types of drug, the affinity remains the same. So it is the characteristic that is differentiating all these drugs. It is efficacy. So they have introduced the concept of efficacy. Efficacy is the one which is determining the magnitude of the response. See, high efficacy. See, if the drug is having higher efficacy, by occupying a smaller proportion of receptor, it can produce the response. So similarly, drug with low efficacy. So even though it occupies more number of receptor, it fails to produce the intended response. So that is due to the concept of efficacy. So even after that, this inverse agonist concept, so it failed to explain the inverse agonist concept. So inverse agonist is occupying a proportion level of receptor, but it is producing opposite effect. Why it is producing opposite effect? That it cannot explain this theory. Then the next theory, rate theory. See, rate theory depends upon the rate of forward reaction and backward reaction. So you know drug is combining with the receptor, form a drug receptor complex, then produces the effect. The forward reaction, the rate constant for forward reaction is K1, for backward reaction it is K2. So what is the rate of association of the drug and receptor to form drug receptor complex? It is explained by the ratio of K1 versus K2. Similarly, rate of dissociation from drug receptor complex back into the drug and free receptor. Once free receptor is available, a new drug will bind to the receptor and form again a fresh DR complex. That is the thing here, it is the equation here. So the rate of dissociation is explained by K2 by K1. So here I told you across the drug, the affinity remains the same. The ability of a drug to bind to the receptor to form a complex, the affinity remains the same for agonist, antagonist and inverse agonist. Which is the characteristic that is differentiating these drugs? It is efficacy. So efficacy depends upon this dissociation. Now the rate of dissociation is the one which is differentiating these drugs. See, the rate of dissociation for a full agonist, it will be faster. Since it is faster, rapidly DR complex will produce effect and rapidly it will be degraded into free drug and free receptor, so that the new drug will come and bind to the receptor, produce the effect. That is the concept. Rate of dissociation will be faster for full agonist. For partial agonist, rate of dissociation will be moderate. For antagonist, it will be 0 or low. That means a stable DR complex will be formed and it will fail to dissociate into the drug and the receptor. The again shortcoming of rate theory is it failed to explain this inverse agonist concept. So how inverse agonist is producing opposite reaction, it failed to explain that concept. Then the next theory, drug-induced protein changes theory. See, drug-induced protein changes theory, it is a non-significant theory where they will tell drug will bind with the receptor. So there is a conformational change in the protein. So as a result, the effect will be same. So it will be a very basic thing, non-significant. Then the most accepted theory was postulated by Black and Leff. We call it as two-state receptor theory. So according to this two-state receptor theory, the receptor always it will exist in two state. So it will always exist as two interchangeable conformation of the receptor. Either it will be in inactive state or it will be in the active state. Always there will be shifting receptor equilibrium. See, at the rest or at the resting stage, that means without any presence of ligand, the receptor equilibrium will be like this. That means more number of inactive form of state will be inactive form of receptor will be there when you compare it with active form of the receptor. So that will be this equilibrium. Ri will be more than Ra. So as a result, no effect will be seen in a normal receptor. Okay. Whereas in a constitutive receptor, you know constitutive receptor, a basal level of action will be there without presence of ligand. So in such kind of receptor, the equilibrium slightly shifts towards the active state of receptor. Since equilibrium slightly shifts towards the active state of receptor, a basal level of response will be seen. So this is at resting stage. Now, when you add full agonist, you know full agonist is producing maximum response. Why full agonist is producing maximum response? This theory explains well. See, full agonist, it will shift the equilibrium towards active state of the receptor. It will completely shift the equilibrium towards the active state of the receptor. As a result, you find the maximum response. When you add partial agonist, what will happen? See, partial agonist, even after occupying the maximum number of receptor, it only shift a part of equilibrium towards the active form of the receptor. That's why you fail to see the maximum response. What this antagonist will do, see, you should be careful here. Antagonist, it is not shifting the equilibrium towards inactive. See, it is maintaining the equilibrium at the resting stage. It is having this equal affinity as that of resting stage. So equal affinity does not mean equally it will bind with inactive state and active state. So it is maintaining the equal affinity as that of resting stage. So at the resting stage, what is the configuration? The inactive form of receptor is more comparatively than that of active form of receptor. This state will be maintained by this antagonist. So as a result, no effect is seen. Now inverse agonist, where the different theories have failed to explain this inverse agonist, where this two-state receptor theory has succeeded in explaining. So constitutive receptor, I told you, at the resting stage constitutive receptor, the equilibrium will be towards the active state of receptor. When you add inverse agonist, this inverse agonist, it will shift the equilibrium more towards inactive state of the receptor, more than that is present at the resting stage without the ligand. So here the more number of inactive state of receptors will be occupied by inverse agonist. As a result, you find the opposite response to that of agonist when you give an inverse agonist. So successfully all types of drugs action is better explained in this two-state receptor theory. That's why it is most accepted theory. And one assignment question is, what will be the shortcoming of this two-state receptor theory? Even after explaining all this thing, there is one shortcoming in two-state receptor theory. What is that shortcoming in the two-state receptor theory? So next is dose-response relationship. See, what do you mean by dose-response relationship? See, the relationship between the dose of a drug and the magnitude of the response it produces is called as dose-response relationship. If such kind of relationship, if you plot it on a graph, then you obtain a curve, and that curve we call it as dose-response curve. See, if this is the graph, if you plot dose along x-axis and response along y-axis, you get a curve, and this curve is called as dose-response curve. So as and when the dose is changed, the response will be changed. So that is the meaning of dose-response relationship or dose-response curve. So similar to dose-response relationship, there is a dose-plasma relationship. Don't confuse dose-response and dose-plasma. See, dose is the amount that you are giving through some route of drug administration. After that, that drug will reach the plasma, that will reach the circulation. So what is the amount that you are giving and what is the amount that reaches the plasma? That is dose-plasma relationship, and it is a pharmacokinetic parameter, and it is obtained by in vivo study. So in vivo study, you can by pharmacokinetic parameter can be estimated. Whereas this dose-response relationship, what is the dose you have given and what is the response we are getting? So that is a pharmacodynamic parameter, and it is an in vitro study. So in vitro only you can calculate this dose-response relationship. So you should be very clear in this. So what are the types of dose-response relationship? You get two types of dose-response relationship. One is graded dose-response relationship or gradual, and another one is quantal or all or none dose-response relationship. So what do you mean by graded dose-response relationship? See, graded or gradual, the name itself suggests here there is change in the response with the change in the dosage. So as and when you increase the dose, there will be increase in the response. There will be increase in the response. So as and when you decrease the dose, there will be decrease in the response. So the response totally depends upon the amount that you are giving. And this graded dose response, it is a characteristic feature in case of individuals. So in case of individuals, you can estimate this graded dose response relationship. See, for example, contraction and relaxation of smooth muscle. So how much magnitude of smooth muscle contraction is there, relaxation is there. So if you give drug A in 10 milligram, what is the contraction state? If you give 20 milligram, what is the amount of contraction? So similarly, change in the blood pressure, change in the dose, that is affecting change in the blood pressure. Then intensity of the adverse effect. And this gradual or graded dose response, it is important to study the efficacy of the therapeutic drugs and toxic symptoms with the toxicants. So if you plot this graded dose response on a graph, so what do you get? You get a dose response curve. So if you plot it on a normal graph, dose along x-axis, response along y-axis, you get a curve. That curve, the shape of this curve is hyperbolic. So in a normal graph, the graded dose response curve will be hyperbolic in nature. So if you plot the same thing on a semi-log graph, so there is a semi-log graph paper, so the assignment we will do it later. So this semi-log graph paper, if you put the log dose along x-axis, response along y-axis, the type of curve what you get is sigmoid in shape. So S shape of curve or sigmoid curve you will get. So if you plot it on a semi-log graph paper, or if you convert dose as log dose. Why we want this semi-log graph paper when normal graph is there? Because see, for example, you are giving 1000 mg of a drug, or if you are giving 10,000 mg of a drug, so very difficult to plot on a normal graph. So you convert this into semi-log. See, log of 1000 is 3, log of 10,000 is 4. So likewise, the dose you can easily plot on a semi-log graph paper. So as a result, so instead of normal graph on a semi-log, you convert dose into log dose and plot a graph. So it's the reason why the dose is converted into log dose. See, this response curve is feature of the graded dose response. So as and when the dose is increasing, the response is also increasing. So characteristic of graded dose response. So in graded dose response, what are the variables you can calculate? So you can calculate threshold dose here, you can calculate effective dose 100 or ceiling dose, you can calculate maximum effect or ceiling effect, you can calculate effective dose 50. What do you mean by threshold dose? See, threshold dose, it is that minimum dose, so wherein it started producing the effect. So here if you see the threshold dose, so this is the dose where you start seeing the effect of the drug, right? So this will become the threshold dose. So it is the minimal dose wherein which the effect is started showing. So that is the meaning of threshold dose. What do you mean by effective dose 100? So here this is the maximum response. So this is the maximum response we have seen out of a drug. So when this maximum response is seen, so when the drug achieved this amount of dosage, right? So this amount of dosage that is producing the maximum response, and this dose will become effective dose 100 or ceiling dose. It is that dose which is producing the maximum response. What do you mean by Emax or ceiling effect? It is the maximum effect produced by the drug. So it corresponds to this level. So this is the maximum effect that is produced by a drug. What do you mean by ED50? See, the 50% of the effect. So half of the maximum effect. So that dose that is producing 50% of the maximum effect, that dose will become effective dose 50. Okay. So these are some of the variables that we can learn from graded dose response curve. So then another is quantal or all or none dose response. So as the name itself suggests, all or none dose response. You see either effect or you don't see the effect. See, either effect is produced or effect is not produced when you change the dosage. See, for example, hypnosis, the ability of a drug to induce sleep. So sleep will be produced or sleep will not be produced. So all or none response. Blood coagulation, coagulation has occurred or not, coagulation has not occurred. Similarly, death is a classical example of quantal response. See, death you cannot quantify the death. So this much amount of death has happened. See, death is death. You cannot quantify it. Death will happen or it doesn't happen. So that response will be quantal response. Change in the dose, effect is either produced or not. And it is seen in population. So you can quantify death in case of population. How you can quantify? See, 10% of people have died. See, 10%, 20% of people have died. You can quantify the death in case of population. So quantal response is a characteristic feature in case of population. Or if you want to convert a graded response into quantal response. See, for example, change in the blood pressure, if you want to convert it into quantal response. How to convert it? See, for example, you have to assume like this. See, you take drugs A, B, C, D, or you take drug A and you assign a particular figure. See, for example, that drug A, it has to decrease the blood pressure less than 140 millimeter of mercury in the population, and you are taking 100 people into consideration. You are taking 100 people into consideration, and the log dose you are giving the various dosage of drug A, but the response what you want to see is less than the drug. It has to decrease the blood pressure less than 140 millimeter of mercury. Then you will start seeing the response. Then you will get a sigmoid curve. So what this response in the sigmoid curve should suggest? So here what it should suggest, see the maximum effect. What is the maximum effect suggest here? See, all 100 people, they are seeing less than 140 millimeter of mercury when they have used this amount of drug A. So when they used this amount of drug A, 100 people have shown decrease in the blood pressure less than 140 millimeter. So likewise you can assume a figure, then you can convert a graded dose response into quantile response. Okay, so it can be seen in population. The quantile dose response will be like this: log dose and percentage response. You are taking percentage response in the population. It is not an individual thing, so percentage you will be considered in the population. So what are the things here? See here the initial stage and the later stage. So if you consider here, the graph will be linear between these two extreme points. So between these two extreme points the graph looks linear. Okay, without any alteration the graph looks linear. So below this extreme point we call people as hyperreactive curve, or more than that extreme point we call it as hyporeactive curve. Why hyperreactive? Because a small variation in the dosage of the drug, it produces a severe response. That's why hyperreactive. Whereas hyporeactive, see, it has reached plateau here. See, whatever the change in the dosage, you see a similar effect. You see the similar effect here. There is no change in the effect. Whereas here, small change in the dosage, there will be change in the response. Hyperreactive people, hyporeactive people. That's the characteristic feature of quantile dose response. And it is more commonly used to calculate lethal dose 50. So lethal dose 50, it is that dose, it is producing 50% mortality in a population that is exposed to the drug in a defined condition. So in a defined condition, what is the dose that is producing 50% of mortality in an exposed population? We call it as lethal dose 50. So what is the difference between graded dose response and quantile dose response? In graded, the response will be graded according to the change in the dose. Here, if you change the dose, the either effect will be produced or not. In graded, it is seen in individual. In quantile, it is seen in population. And in graded, the examples are the change in the BP, contraction, relaxation, smooth muscle. In quantile, the hypnosis, blood coagulation, and the death. And you can write the difference in the dose response curve also. So this is about today's topic, where we studied about drug receptor interaction, types of drug, then dose response relationship. So another video also I will take up to cover this pharmacodynamics. Then the assignment questions. What are the assignment questions? Say assignment question. The first one is, what happens to the efficacy of the phenylephrine when given along with the clonidine, the partial agonist? What is the difference between inverse agonist and the antagonist? Define affinity and the inverse agonist. What are the difference between graded and quantile dose response relationship? The efficacy of inverse agonist is decreased when antagonist is used along with it. True or false? Justify if true, justify if false. What is the necessity of using agonist when already endogenous ligand is doing its duty? Explain briefly. See, for example, norepinephrine. See, norepinephrine is produced by the body. It is acting on the alpha receptor. It is producing increase in the blood pressure. Then what is the necessity of giving phenylephrine? Okay, so that you should explain it briefly. The efficacy of inverse agonist is 0 to -1, we know. Suppose if its efficacy reaches 0, what do we call inverse agonist as? Which factor differentiates agonist, antagonist and inverse agonist? Is it affinity or efficacy? Justify. Okay.